Good evening, everybody. This is Brandon coming to you with another teaching out of the book of Psalms. Today's teaching comes from Psalms chapter 22, and then I will be reading out of Matthew 26, and I hope tonight's uh, teaching blesses you. And tonight's uh, teaching is about Christ's agony as he was on his way to the cross. And I hope tonight's teaching blesses you. And before I go into that, I want to pray for the reading of God's word. Um, Father God, I come to you boldly before the throne of grace, Lord, and Lord, I ask you to bless this word I'm about to give out, Lord, and I ask you to bless the ears that hears it, Lord, and I ask you to touch all the sickness going around, Lord, and Lord, I ask you to help us to be encouraged instead of being fearful, Lord, and help us to get closer to you, Lord, and I ask this word to go out to the ears of the lost, Lord, and to touch their hearts, Lord, and so they can get to know you, Lord, and I thank you and I praise you in Jesus' name I pray, Amen. Um, Psalms 22 says, my God, why have you forsaken me? Why are you so far from my deliverance and from my words of groaning? My God, I cry by day, but you do not answer. By night, yet I have no rest. But you are holy, enthroned on the praises of Israel. Our fathers trusted in you. They trusted, and you rescued them. That they cried to you and were set free. They trusted in you and were not disgraced. But I am a worm and not a man, scorned by men and despised by people. Everyone who sees me mocks me. They sneer and shake their heads. He relies on the Lord. Let him rescue him. Let the Lord deliver him, since he takes pleasure in him. You took me from the womb, making me secure while at my mother's breast. I was given over to you at birth. You have been my God from my mother's womb. Do not be far from me, because distress is near, and there is no one to help. Many bulls surround me. Strong ones of Bashan encircle me. That then open their mouths against me. Lions mauling and roaring. I am poured out like water, and all my bones are disjointed. My heart is like wax melting within me. My my strength is dried up like baked clay. My tongue sticks to the roof of my mouth. You put me in the dust of death. For dogs have surrounded me. A gang of evildoers has closed in on me. They pierced my hands and feet. I can count all my bones. People look and stare at me. They divided my garments among themselves to cast lots for my clothing. But you, Lord, don't be far away. My strength come quickly to help me. Deliver my life from the sword, my only life from the power of these dogs. Save me from the mouth of the lion. You have rescued me from the horn of the oxen. Um, but this basically says, like Jesus said on the cross, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? And people did, uh, they mocked him, they beat him, um, they did cast lots with his clothes. Um, uh, let's see, uh, they hurt him. Um, he was in a lot of pain, even though he was holy, they could not see it. And now, uh, now we're going to Matthew 26, and then I will be reading Matthew 27. Matthew 26 says, when Jesus had finished saying all this, he told his disciples, "You know that the Passover takes place after 2 days, and the Son of Man will be handed over to be crucified." Then the chief priests and the elders of the people assembled in the palace of the high priest, who was called Caiaphas, and they conspired to arrest Jesus in a treacherous way and kill him, not during the festival, that they said, so there won't be rioting among the people. While Jesus was in Bethany, in the house of Simon, a man who had a serious skin disease, a woman approached him with an alabaster jar of a very expensive fragrant oil. She poured it on his head as he was reclining at the table. When the disciples saw it, that they were indignant. Why this waste? They asked. That this might have been sold for a great deal and given to the poor. But Jesus, aware of this, said to them, "Why are you bothering this woman? She has done a noble thing for me. You always have the poor with you, but you do not always have me. By pouring this fragrant oil on my body, she has prepared me for my burial. I assure you, wherever this gospel is proclaimed in the whole world, what this woman has done will also be told in memory of her." Then one of the 12, the man called Judas Iscariot, went to the chief priest and said, "What are you willing to give me if I hand him over to you?" So they weighed out 30 pieces of silver for him, and from that time he started looking for a good opportunity to betray him. On the first day of unleavened bread, the disciples came to Jesus, asked, "Where do you want us to prepare Passover so you may eat it?" "Go into the city to a certain man," he said, and tell him, "The teacher says, my time is near. I am celebrating Passover at your place with my disciples." Did as Jesus had directed them, and prepared the Passover. When evening came, he was reclining at the table with the 12. While they were eating, he said, "I assure you, one of you will betray me." Deeply distressed, each one began to say to him, "Surely not I, Lord." He replied, "That the one who dipped his hand with me in the bowl, he will betray me. The Son of Man will go just as it is written about him, but woe to the man by whom the Son of Man is betrayed. It would have been better for that man if he had not been born." Then Judas, his betrayer, replied, "Surely not I, Rabbi." "You have said it," he told him. As they were eating, Jesus took bread and blessed and broke it and gave it to the disciples and said, "Take and eat it. This is my body." And then he took a cup after giving thanks. He gave it to them and said, drink from it, all of you, for this is my blood that establishes the covenant. It is shed for many for the forgiveness of sins. But I tell you, from this moment I will not drink of this fruit of the vine until that day when I drink it in a new way in my Father's kingdom with you. After singing psalms, that they went out of the Mount of Olives. Then Jesus said to them, "Tonight all of you will run away because of me, for it is written, I will strike the shepherd, and the sheep of the flock will be scattered. But after I have been resurrected, I will go ahead of you to Galilee." Peter told him, "Even if everyone runs away because of you, I will never run away. I assure you, Jesus said to him, tonight, before the rooster crows, you will deny me 3 times. Oh my Lord, that would be a bad thing to hear. Even if I have to die with you, Peter told him, I will never deny you. And all the disciples said the same thing. Then Jesus came with them to a place called Gethsemane, and he told his disciples, sit here while I go over there and pray. Taking along Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, he began to be sorrowful and deeply distressed. Then he said to them, my soul is swallowed up in sorrow to the point of death. Remain here and stay awake with me. Going a little farther, he fell face down and prayed, my Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not as I will, but as your will be done. Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping, and he asked Peter, so couldn't you stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray, so that you won't enter into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak. Again, a second time, he went away and prayed, my Father, if this cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done. And he came again and found them sleeping because they could not keep their eyes open. After leaving them, he went away again and prayed a third time, saying the same thing once more. Then he came to the disciples and said to them, are you still sleeping and resting? Look, the time is near. The Son of Man is being betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let's go. See, my betrayer is near. While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, suddenly arrived. A large mob with swords and clothes was with him, from the chief priests and elders of the people. His betrayer had given them a sign. The one I kiss, he's the one. Arrest him. So he went right up to Jesus and said, greetings, Rabbi, and kissed him. Friend, Jesus asked him, why have you come? Then he came up and took hold of Jesus and arrested him. At that moment, one of those with Jesus reached out his hand and drew his sword. He struck the high priest's slave and cut off his ear. Then Jesus told him, put your sword back into its place, because all who take up a sword will perish by a sword. Or do you think that I cannot call my Father, and he will provide me at once with more than 12 legions of angels? How then would the scriptures be fulfilled that say it must happen this way? At that time Jesus said to the crowds, have you come out with swords and clubs as if I were a criminal to capture me? Every day I used to sit teaching in the temple complex, and you didn't arrest me. But all this has happened so that the prophetic scriptures would be fulfilled. Then all the disciples deserted him and ran away. Those who had arrested Jesus led him away to Caiaphas, the high priest, where scribes and elders had convened. Meanwhile, Peter was following him at a distance. Right to the high priest's courtyard, he went in and was sitting with the temple police to see the outcome. The chief priests and the whole Sanhedrin were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so they could put him to death. But they could not find any, even though many false witnesses came forward. Finally, 2 who came forward stated, this man said, I can demolish God's sanctuary and rebuild it in 3 days. The high priest then stood up and said to him, don't you have an answer to what these men are testifying against you? But Jesus kept silent. Then the high priest said to him, by the living God, I place you under oath. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God. You have said it, Jesus told him. But I tell you, in the future, you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the power and coming on the clouds of heaven. Then the high priest tore his robes and said, he has blasphemed. Why do you still need witnesses? Look now, you've heard the blasphemy. What is your decision? They answered, he deserves death. Then they spit in his face and beat him. Others slapped him and said, prophesy to us, Messiah, who hit you? Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant approached him and said, and she said, "You are with Jesus the Galilean too." But he denied it in front of everyone. I don't know what you're talking about. When he had gone out into the gateway, another woman saw him and told those who were there, this man was with Jesus the Nazarene. And again he denied it with an oath. I don't know the man. After a little while, those standing there approached and said to Peter, "You certainly are one of them, since even your accent gives you away." Then he started to curse and swear with an oath, "I do not know the man." I'm immediately and immediately a rooster crowed, and Peter remembered the words of Jesus had spoken. Before the rooster crows, you would deny me 3 times. And he went outside and wept bitterly. When daybreak came, all the chief priests and the elders of the people plotted against Jesus to put him to death. After tying him up, they led him away and handed him over to Pilate, the governor. Then Judas, his betrayer, seeing that he had been condemned, was full of remorse and returned the 30 pieces of silver to the chief priests and elders. I have sinned by betraying innocent blood, he said. What's that to us? They said. See it to yourself. So he threw the silver in the sanctuary and departed. Then he went and hanged himself. The chief priest took the silver and said, It is not lawful to put it in the temple treasury, since it is blood money. So they conferred together and bought the potter's field with it as a burial place for foreigners. Therefore, that field has been called blood field to this day. Then what was spoken through the prophet Jeremiah was fulfilled. They took the 30 pieces of silver, the price of him whose price was set by the Israelites, and they gave them for the potter's field, as the Lord directed me. Now Jesus stood before the governor. Are you the king of the Jews? The governor asked him. Jesus answered, You have said it. And while he was being accused by the chief priests and elders, he didn't answer. Then Pilate said to him, Don't you hear how much they are testifying against you? But he didn't answer him on even one charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. At the festival, the governor's custom was to release to the crowd a prisoner that they wanted. At that time, that they had a notorious prisoner called Barnabas. So when they had gathered together, Pilate said to them, Who is it you wanted me to release for you, Barnabas or Jesus, who is called Messiah? For he knew that they had handed him over because of envy. While he was sitting on the judge's bench, his wife sent word to him, having nothing to do with the righteous man. For today I have suffered terribly in a dream because of him. The chief priests and the elders, however, persuaded the crowds to ask for Barnabas and to execute Jesus. The governor asked them, Which of the 2 men do you want me to release to you? Barnabas, they answered. Pilate asked them, What should I do then with Jesus, who is called Messiah? They all answered, Crucify him. Then he said, Why? Well, what has he done wrong? But they kept shouting, Crucify him, all the more. When Pilate saw that he was getting nowhere, but that a riot was starting instead, He took some water, washed his hands in front of the crowd, and said, I am innocent of this man's blood. See it to yourselves. All the people answered, His blood be on us and on our children. Then he released Barnabas to them, but after having Jesus flogged, he handed him over to be crucified. Then the governor's soldiers took Jesus into headquarters and gathered the whole company around him. They stripped him and dressed him into a scarlet military robe, and they twisted together a crown of thorns, put it on his head, and placed a reed into his right hand. And they knelt down before him and mocked him, Hail, King of the Jews! Then they spit on him, took the reed, and kept hitting on him on his head. When they had mocked him, they stripped him of the robe and put his clothes on him and led him away to crucify him. As they were going out, they found a Syrian man named Simon. They forced this man to carry his cross. When they came to the place called Golgotha, which means the skull place, they gave him wine mixed with gall to drink. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. Jesus is placed on the cross. After crucifying him, that they divided his clothes by casting lots. Then they sat down and were guarding him there above his head. That they put up the charge against him in writing: This is Jesus, the King of the Jews. Then two criminals were crucified with him, one on the right hand and one on the left. Those who passed by were yelling insults, him shaking their heads and saying that the one who would demolish the sanctuary and rebuild it in 3 days, save yourself. If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross. In the same way, the chief priests with the scribes, elders, mocked him and said, He saved others, but he cannot save himself. He is the King of Israel. Let him come down now from the cross. We will believe in him. He has put his trust in God. God rescue him now, if he wants him. For he said, I am God's son. In the same way, even the criminals were crucified with him, kept taunting him. From noon until 3 in the afternoon, darkness came over the whole land. About 3 in the afternoon, Jesus cried out with a loud voice, Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani. That is, my God, why hast thou forsaken me? When some of those standing there heard this, that they said, He is calling for Elijah. Immediately one of them ran and got a sponge filled with sour wine, fixed it on the reed, and offered him a drink. But the rest said, Let's see if Elijah comes to save him. Jesus shouted again with a loud voice and gave up his spirit. Suddenly, the curtain of the sanctuary was split in two from top to bottom. The earth quaked, the rocks were split, the tombs were also opened, and many bodies of the saints who had fallen asleep were raised. And they came out of the tombs after his resurrection, and entered the holy city and appeared to many. When the centurion and those with him who were guarding Jesus saw the earthquake and the things that happened, they were terrified and said, This man really was the Son of God. Many women who had followed Jesus from Galilee ministered to him, were there, looking on from a distance. Among them were Mary Magdalene, Mary the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of Zebedee's son. When it was evening, a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph came, who himself had also become a disciple of Jesus. He approached Pilate and asked for Jesus' body. Then Pilate offered that it be released. So Joseph took the body, wrapped it in clean fine linen, and placed it in his new tomb, which he had cut into the rock. He left after rolling a great stone against the entrance of the tomb. Mary Magdalene and other Mary were seated there facing the tomb. The next day, which followed the the preparation day, the chief priest and the Pharisees gathered before Pilate and said, "Sir, we remember that while this is deceiver still alive, he said, after 3 days I will rise again. Therefore, give orders that the tomb be made secure until the third day. Otherwise, his disciples may come steal him and tell the people he has been raised from the dead. Then the last deception will be worse than the first. You have a guard of soldiers." Pilate told them, "Go and make it as secure as you know how." Then they went and made the tomb by sealing the stone and setting the guard. Now this tells me right here how much Jesus really what all he went through, from the beating, from the nailing on the cross, from the mocking, and Jesus went through that for us. And I encourage you tonight, if you don't know who Jesus is, I encourage you to make him your Lord and Savior today. He will be the best thing that's ever happened to you. And no matter what you're going through, what you're doing, Jesus loves you, and come to him as you are, and he will do the rest. I hope this blessed you, and I hope and I hope you will love Jesus as much as I do. And I hope each and every one has you blessed night.